Hello everyone, welcome back to another Genshin Impact video. So the leader of the Liyue Opera Troupe herself is now finally playable, meaning that players are excited to see just how well Yunjin can perform outside of the Opera House and instead on the battlefield. And since we are getting a free Liyue 4-star for Lantern Rite, many players are wondering whether or not they should pick Yunjin, and whether or not she's worth building. Today we're going to be breaking down Yunjin's kit, her best weapon choices, artifacts, and even which teammates you should probably consider teaming her up with, so that you can decide whether or not she's worth building based on what you currently have on your account. If you do end up finding the video helpful at all, please feel free to leave me a like and comment down below. I greatly appreciate it, and it does help me boost into the YouTube algorithm. And if you want to see more Genshin Impact content from me, make sure to hit that subscribe button and click that notification bell. Okay, but with all that out of the way, let's get into the video. In my personal opinion, Yunjin is actually one of the most interesting characters that we've gotten to date. This is because she's actually extremely niche while also being very versatile at the exact same time. Niche and versatile, you're probably thinking I'm not making much sense, right? But I mean, it's true. The entirety of Yunjin's kit is designed to boost the normal attack of her teammates, meaning that only characters that specialize in normal attacks are really going to see a benefit with this. However, unlike a lot of the support characters that we've been getting lately, Yunjin is not tied down to one specific element, meaning that as long as a character benefits from a boost in normal attack damage, then Yunjin is probably going to be a great teammate for them. However, at the exact same time, if a character doesn't benefit at all from normal attacks, say they specialize in charge attacks, plunging damage, skill or burst damage, then Yunjin is basically not going to be doing anything for them. So you definitely need to take that into consideration if you try to plug her into a team. Otherwise, you're wasting a valuable slot that could go to another teammate that could help you more. Okay, but speaking of her kit, let's actually break it down step by step. First up, we have her auto attacks, and you should probably just not level this up at all. This is mainly because Yunjin is a designated support unit, and as you'll see in a bit, she mainly scales off of defense, meaning that her auto attacks basically do no damage, which in my opinion is such a shame considering just how pretty they are. But alas, it wasn't meant to be. Her skill, on the other hand, is definitely worth building. Her skill is essentially a counter that charges up to 2 times. The longer you hold, the more damage it deals, and the more energy that you produce. This skill has a surprisingly long range, and is very good at knocking enemies back, letting you control the flow of battle a little bit better, and giving you space between you and your enemies. Also, similar to Beidou, it does have a perfect counter mechanic, meaning that if you're very good with your timing, you can boost all the way up to charge level 2, directly when you're hit by an enemy. However, it's definitely her burst which is the heart of Yunjin's kit, and definitely her biggest selling point. While her burst doesn't deal a lot of damage, it does provide your entire team a normal attack buff, which scales off of Yunjin's current defense, obviously meaning that you want as much defense on Yunjin as possible. This buff affects your next 30 normal attacks, meaning that characters that can attack quickly are going to be the ones that can take the most advantage of Yunjin's buff. Okay, but now that we've gone over her kit, let's take a quick look at my Yunjin build so that we'll all be on the same page. My Yunjin is currently only level 70, meaning that she can be leveled up 20 more times. This is really important to note because the only way to raise your base defense is through leveling up. Thus, a lot of her potential is locked behind higher levels. My Yunjin's defense is currently sitting at a flat 2000, and unfortunately her elemental mastery is at 0. This is bad because it means that her crystallized shields won't have much strength to them, so unless you are running a shielder on the team with her, you're going to want at least a little bit of EM on your Yunjin to make your crystallized shields a little more reliable. Her crit rate is at 42.3%, her crit damage is at 133.9%, her energy recharge is at 138.6%, and her geo bonus damage is currently at 24%. As for her weapon, I'm currently running her on the Favonius Lance, and honestly, this is probably the only weapon that I would really recommend for her. This is because it does help her with her energy recharge since she does have a 60 cost burst, and a lot of the time Yunjin might actually be your only geo member on the team, meaning she's going to need a lot of energy particles in order to refund her burst. You can run the Skyward Spine or even Engulfing Lightning if you have them, however it's probably more useful to use them on other characters. And if you don't have the Favonius Lance, then you can use the Prototype Star Glitter as another energy recharge option. Just keep in mind that it won't give you nearly as much energy back, but it is a free-to-play option. One last option that I can mention is the Deathmatch, since it does give you increased defense when there are 2 or more enemies around, but if I'm being completely honest, I don't think that pulling the Deathmatch specifically for Yunjin is worth it. It's much better suited for damage dealers, and Yunjin can use the energy recharge a lot more than that little bit of extra defense. As for her artifacts, I'm running the 4-piece Husk of Opulent Dream set. This way I can get a lot of defense on her while also getting a little bit of geo bonus damage. However, you can also do a 2-piece Husk of Opulent Dreams 2-piece Emblem of Severed Fate to make sure you have enough energy recharge, or a 2-piece Husk set with a 2-piece of Defender's Will, which is actually the way to get the highest amount of defense possible. As for her constellations, we're going to start at C0, however later in the video we will raise her to C5, and her talents are currently sitting at 166. Okay, and now that we have her build out of the way, let's get into how much Yunjin actually improves your damage. We will go over a few other characters later on in the video, video, but we're gonna start out with Yoimiya. This is because Yoimiya's entire kit is built around normal attack damage, so Yunjin should be the perfect support for her. First, let's take a look at Yoimiya's damage without Yunjin's buff. As you can see, Yoimiya's damage is actually pretty decent on her own. However, let's see what happens when we add Yun Jin's Burst into the mix. As you can see at C0 and talent level 6, there is a decent boost to her overall damage. I know a lot of people are going to look at these hits and think that this isn't that big of a deal, since it's only adding about 2,000 to 5,000 damage per hit, but you have to keep in mind that this is affecting every single one of her hits up to 30 times. So if you were to compile all the numbers together, this is actually a pretty significant damage boost. And if you were to add in her other teammates such as Kazuha and Bennett on top of Yunjin, then you can actually see that her damage absolutely skyrockets. In fact, we were hitting so hard that we couldn't even see the full damage string, so let's take her to an enemy that can take a lot more hits. As you can see on the Maku Kenki, she's hitting between 20 to 75,000 damage per normal attack, which in my opinion is actually pretty insane considering how fast she fires off her shots. However, to be completely transparent, my Yoimiya did die right here, since we didn't have any way to defend ourselves, so please thank Yoimiya for taking one for the team. Okay, but I was curious to see just how much her constellations actually do affect her gameplay, so I decided to bring her all the way up to C5. C1 reduced her skill cooldown, C2 increased party members' normal attack by 15% after using her burst, C3 brought her burst talent up by 3 levels, C4 increases Yunjin's defense by 20% for 12 seconds after causing a crystallized reaction, C5 increases her skill talent level by 3, and C6, well, I don't have C6. But it increases your normal attack speed by 12%, which is a huge damage boost over time. Like I said, I don't currently have it, so I can't show it to you guys, but I am planning on picking her for my free Liyue 4-star, so that'll change soon. Now let's go ahead and test it on the Magu Kenki again, and as you can see, now she's doing between 30 to 80,000 damage per normal attack. Again, this isn't a huge boost to each individual hit, but when you factor in the entire attack string, this is actually a huge difference, essentially more or less boosting your damage by over 25,000 damage per attack string. Oh, and for those wondering, Yoimiya actually survived this time. Psych! Okay, we gotta talk about this. So as you can see, adding Yunjin to your team can actually be a huge boost in damage. However, if you don't run a shielder with these characters, then you're very vulnerable to damage and interruption. Compare this to when you're using a character like Zhongli instead of Yunjin, and you can see that while the attack damage is lower, you are safe the entire time and are less prone to taking interruptions, which ultimately kills your DPS. And while you could opt out to take out Kazuha in favor of Zhongli, while it is much safer, it is a big damage loss. Does this make Yunjin a liability? Not necessarily. It just means that you might need to learn how to dodge a little bit more, or time your rotations in order to have Yunjin's skill available when you need to block an attack. I did take the Yoimiya, Yunjin, Kazuha, and Bennett team into Spiral Abyss, and honestly they performed really well together. I was able to get an under 1 minute clear in the first chamber, and this is primarily due to all the buffs that Yoimiya received from her teammates, allowing her to whittle down the wolves' health bars pretty quickly, even though she wasn't able to take on more than one enemy at a time. Okay, but as much as I love Yoimiya, it's time to switch up the team comps. I want to show you guys some teams that actually surprised me in terms of their total damage output, so let's start with some 4-star characters that actually got a huge improvement when using Yunjin. We're going to be going over Fischl, Noelle, and Chongyun. There are some other characters that benefit from Yunjin as well, however, we're just going to focus on these 3 for now. Also, I want to make it known that these characters are not fully built. All 3 of these characters are level 70, and therefore their normal attacks are only at level 6, meaning that these characters can actually do a lot more damage if you fully invest into them and max out their normal attacks. Okay, but that being said, let's start with Fischl. Back in the day, Fischl was actually very popular as a physical damage dealer, but as content has gotten a lot harder, this build completely fell off. However, with the help of Yunjin, Superconduct, and Bennett, I can actually see this build being a lot more viable once again. This is mainly because Fischl actually attacks very quickly, and therefore she can take advantage of the 30 stacks of Yunjin's burst. Let's just say that I was actually pretty surprised by the damage output considering that my Fischl isn't very well built. Next up we have Noelle, and as any Noelle main will tell you, she primarily focuses on normal attacks. So adding Yunjin into the mix actually does help boost her damage by quite a bit. It's not as much as Yoimiya or Fischl since she doesn't attack nearly as quickly, but when you do start to add in Bennett and Goro for extra attack buffs, the damage output can't really be argued with. And to be honest, this has me wanting to build my Noelle a little bit more so I can see just how far she can go. The last 4-star main carry that I want to talk about is Chongyun. Now on his own, Chongyun isn't really known for his normal attack damage. In fact, I think that most people use him as a burst sub DPS, However, when you add Yunjin into the mix, I was actually surprised to see how much damage he was doing. So seeing this, I actually got very curious to see what would happen if I mixed the buffs between Yunjin and Chunhe, and let's just say I was really surprised by how much damage he was dealing. Yes, this does mean that you would have to pull both Chunhe and Yunjin in order to make this team comp work, but for anyone that has these 3 characters, try this team out and let me know what you think of it, because honestly, I think that there's a lot of potential here. Okay, and that's all for the 4 stars, but there are a few more 5 stars that I do want to briefly mention. First off, let's talk about Eula. Now, I can already hear people furiously typing, Eula gets 50% of her damage from her burst, focus on that, not her normal attacks. But hear me out, the other 50% of her damage does come from her normal attacks. So if you have a way to boost both her normal attacks as well as her burst, then you're just gonna get an overall damage increase across the board. Pairing her with teammates that can cause superconduct makes it so that while she's building up stacks of her burst, she's going to just be dealing a lot more damage overall. Obviously, there are other characters that better suit Eula's needs, like a C6 Rosaria, but if you don't have that as an option, then you can slot in Yunjin and still see a decent increase in damage. Next up, I want to shout out to the C0 Hu Tao mains, cause this could be game changing. If you don't have a solid Anemo support in order to provide Shred for Pyro, then slotting in Yunjin is actually a pretty decent option for you. While her charge attacks still are her #1 source of damage, by slotting in Yunjin you can mix between your normal and charge attacks and not see that big of a damage loss. On top of this, in long battles this will save you stamina and make it easier to chase after your enemies. Let's just say that I was surprised to see 40 to 50k auto attacks, and that this makes C0 Hu Tao a lot more viable. Alright, and last but not least, I want to quickly talk about Childe. Tartaglia doesn't hit that hard on his own. It's sad, but it's true. However, when you do add Yunjin into the mix, all of a sudden the damage from his auto attacks are dealing a lot more damage. Now, is it on par with some other damage dealers? Still not quite, but for those that just want to see big numbers on his normal attacks, this is definitely a decent option. Okay, and I could go on and show other units as well, such as Razor or even physical Jean or Kaya, but I don't want to talk your ears off for another 5 minutes. The nice thing about Yunjin is that you can kind of mix and match her with just about any unit that uses normal attacks, and they are going to see a damage boost. However, on the flip side, if they aren't dealing normal attack damage, or don't specialize in normal attack damage, then you're just probably not going to want to use Yunjin at all. But actually, either way, I'm pretty pleasantly surprised by Yunjin, and I think that she's a great addition to Genshin Impact. Like I said, she is pretty niche, but she's still flexible at the same time. While I do like seeing specialized units for certain elements, it's nice having a character that you can slot into any team, and they're gonna do decently. I think that building Yunjin is actually a pretty safe investment, and I think that her popularity and viability is actually going to increase over time when we start getting more normal attackers. But for now, I would give Yunjin a decent rating, and say that if you like normal attackers, then you should definitely go ahead and build her. But that's about all that I have to say about Yunjin for now. If you are still struggling to decide which 2.4 banner you want to summon on, I have made a few Are They Worth It videos. We've already covered Xiao, Xinhe, and Ganyu, and I will be working on a Zhongli video within the next week or so make sure to keep your eyes peeled for that. If you did end up enjoying the video at all, please feel free to leave me a like and comment down below with your current thoughts on Yunjin. Do you think that she's a decent unit? Do you think that people should build her? Or do you think that people should pass her for other units? And if you want to see more Genshin Impact content like this, make sure to hit that subscribe button and click that notification bell. But that's all that I have for you guys today, so until next time, best wishes, bye!